Hey folks, Ed from Brain Pulp TV, and as of this recording, it is the release weekend for M19, the newest expansion for Magic the Gathering, and Wizards has come out with not just 2 new Planeswalker decks, but 5, one for each color on the mana wheel. Yes, these Planeswalker decks are all monocolored. So normally I open these up on, or closer to around the pre-release weekend. I usually pick up the decks then. Wasn't able to do that quite as early as I normally am, so sadly this is a little bit late for the channel, but still, I enjoy opening them up. Hopefully you guys still enjoy watching it. And today we are going to be opening up the Mono Blue Tezzeret Cruel Machinist deck. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is open up the box, show you what contents you can expect to find in one of these Planeswalker deck boxes, and then I'm going to go through each individual card in the deck itself and talk a bit about how I feel the deck is meant to be played. So there's also, as you can see here, a single booster pack in this deck, so we're also going to be cracking that open at the end of the video. But for now, let's open up the box and we'll see what's inside. Now, these decks used to come with 2 booster packs. They only come with 1 now. I'm not sure if that's going to stay the same from here on out, but the price should actually be adjusted so that they should also be a little bit cheaper now that they only come with 1 booster pack. That should be the case. Oh, and this one, the Planeswalker just popped right up before I even opened it up. So here is Tezzeret Cruel Machinist. We're going to set this aside though for now, and it's foil, as you can see, which is really quite nice. We're going to set this aside, and I'm going to talk about the rest of the contents here, including the packaging, which will move over here. So here we have the deck box with some nice artwork for Tezzeret, and it also has his name on the side. This does fit sleeved cards, so you can sleeve up your deck and store it in here in the future. Now I'm just going to set this over here. And of course we have the deck. We have the deck itself, which once again, I'm going to be opening this up. I'm going to be going through each card in that and talking about how the deck should be played, or could be played, I should say. Not necessarily should be played. You can do what you like with your own deck, of course. Don't let me tell you any different. Now, this is a little fold out. It talks about Tezzeret a little bit here. It talks about the deck. It also discusses some of the terms you're going to see on the cards within his deck. So this used to also have a deck list, doesn't anymore. I always mention that. I'll probably stop harping on that one day. Also, the quick reference guide, good for new players and players who may have been away from Magic and want sort of a little refresher course as to how a turn of Magic typically goes. Now, we also have the single pack of M19 that comes with these decks. This is going to be opened up at the very end of the video. But first, we're going to move everything off to the side, and we are going to talk about the deck and the Planeswalker itself. So to kick things off, Tezzeret Cruel Machinist. 6-drop, 4 and 2 blue gets you a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. The +1 ability, draw a card. I love drawing cards. The 0 ability is until your next turn, target artifact you control becomes a 5/5 creature in addition to its other types. -7 is put any number of cards from your hand onto the battlefield face down. They're 5/5 artifact creatures. Now, just based on the Planeswalker, I'm guessing there's going to be an artifact theme to this deck. One of the things that I've noticed, now this is a mono blue deck. So there have been other Planeswalker decks which have had blue in them. I'm hoping in this deck, there's something that's been lacking in other blue Planeswalker decks. And that's sort of at least a partial focus on counterspells, because that is a huge, huge ability for blue. It's one of their like exclusive abilities for the most part. There are a few other cards out there in history that have allowed you to counter spells with other colors, but that's sort of a big thing with blue, and it's been really underutilized in Planeswalker decks that have blue. So I'm really hoping that's going to be one of the themes as well too, but I'm guessing a lot of this is going to be about artifacts. Now let's go ahead and crack open the deck itself and see if my suspicions are confirmed. Now I'm going to talk about the creatures first and then talk about the non-creature spells after that. So to kick things off, we have a 1-drop Gearsmith Prodigy. It is a 1/2 human artificer, and it gets +1/+0 as long as you control an artifact. So immediately looks like the artifact theme is definitely going to be a thing in this deck, and that seems to be further confirmed by Field Creeper, which is a 2-drop 2/1 artifact creature Scarecrow. So we'll move that to the side. We have Sky Scanner. For 3, you get a 1/1 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So there's definitely going to be a bit more card draw in this deck other than just if you get Tezzeret on the board. We have Tezzeret Strider. a sort of common thing with the Planeswalker decks, a creature which gets better or gets some sort of bonus when you have your Planeswalker on the board. So it is a 3/1 for 3 Golem. As long as you control a Tezzeret Planeswalker, Tezzeret Strider has Menace. So you're going to get 3 copies of that, and that would be an exclusive card to this deck. So we have Skilled Animator. For 2 and 1 blue, you get a 1/3 Human Artificer, and when it enters the battlefield, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with a base power and toughness 5/5 for as long as the animator remains on the battlefield. It's a very similar effect to Tezzeret's 0 ability, though in this case it's going to remain permanent as long as he is still on the battlefield. Next up, for 2 and 1 blue, we have Exclusion Mage, which is a 2/2 human wizard, and when it enters the battlefield, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Similar, very similar to one of my favorite cards in Pauper, which is Mana War. Not exactly the same, but this could be a very, very useful card in a lot of decks. They give you just one. They give you just one. I would definitely want 4 in this deck. That's just me, but I just love the design of Exclusion Mage. So we have a 4-drop, 3 and 1 blue gets you a 3/2 flying Drake. And yeah, pretty much that's just it. It's a 3/2 flyer for 4. Not the worst, not the best. 2 of them in the deck. So we have Scholar of Stars, also for 4, 3 and 1 blue, gets you another 3/2 creature. This time it's a Human Artificer, and when it enters the battlefield, if you control an artifact, draw a card, which is probably going to be quite likely in this deck. So you get 1 copy of that. Moving up to the 5-drop spot, we have Gearsmith Guardian. It is a 3/5 artifact creature construct, and it gets +2/+0 as long as you control a blue creature. Mono blue deck, not that difficult to have happen when you are playing that particular creature. Now we have in the 6-drop spot for 4 and 2 blue, the Riddle Master Sphinx. It is a 5/5 Sphinx creature with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Some tempo shifting going on in this deck, being able to bounce your opponent's creatures back to their hand. Very, very useful. It can sometimes completely negate your opponent's last turn if they just cast a large creature. You put something like this or the Exclusion Mage onto the battlefield, all of a sudden what they did last turn doesn't really matter. So I do like that. Very frustrating for opponents, but very useful if you are playing this deck. Now coming in at a thunderous 7 mana, you have the 3/3 Meteor Golem. It is an artifact creature, but when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. A 3/3 body with pretty much unconditional removal. Pretty nice, pretty nice. So just as long as it's not a land, you can destroy it. And of course, if it doesn't have indestructible. So there are 2 copies in this deck. These, I'm not entirely sure. I'm just based, at this point in the recordings, I've only opened up the Ajani deck as well as this one. There was 1 copy in the Ajani deck. They might be putting these in each of the Planeswalker decks. I haven't confirmed that yet. So we will see as I open up more and more of them. So now that we've talked about the creatures, let's talk about the non-creature spells. And just guessing there's going to be a fair number of artifacts in this mix. First up, as a 2-drop, we have Pendulum of Patterns. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, and you can pay 5, tap it, sacrifice Pendulum of Patterns, draw a card. So the cost to bring this out and then draw a card is quite expensive. However, in this deck, because there's so much stuff that either benefits from artifacts or can augment artifacts, it could still be a useful card in this deck. Not, in my opinion, for copies of it useful, but still a useful card in this deck. Then we have, for 3, we have Manalith, an artifact where you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Not something you usually see in a monocolored deck. I mean, I understand why. It is still ramp, regardless of the fact that there is only blue in this deck. There is only 1 copy of that. Not exactly sure if it's the best card in this deck, but once again, it's ramp, so sometimes you can't go wrong with ramp. Moving on to a non-artifact spell, we have Dwindle. For 2 and 1 blue, you have an aura enchantment, and enchanted creature gets -6/-0, and when it blocks, destroy it. So it pretty much takes out a creature out of the game. Like, when the big threat you have facing you, put this on there, it basically defangs it, and then if they ever use it to block, it's going to destroy that creature. So you get 3 of those in there. Some card draw. Haven't seen any counter spells, and I really don't think there's going to be any in this deck. We have Divination. For 2 and 1 blue, you have a sorcery, draw 2 cards. Pretty much does what it says on the tin. Draw 2 cards for 3, 1 copy of that in here. Uncomfortable Chill for 2 and 1 blue. Creatures your opponent control get -2, -0 until the end of turn. Draw a card. This could be useful against, for example, the Ajani deck, a white weenie style deck. So your opponent swings in with all of his, if the creatures plunges in, this can make things a little bit uncomfortable for your opponent, should you be able to cast it at just the right moment. There's 1 copy of that in this deck. Moving on, for a 4-drop and one of the rares in the deck, we have One with the Machine. It is a sorcery and draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control. I've seen people play this in some of the early M19 play that I've seen online. Obviously, its usefulness varies depending on what you have on the board. I've seen people just draw 2 cards for 4, which is not great at sorcery speed. Then I've seen people draw 5 cards, and at one point I think it was even 6 cards. So it's useful. I'm not saying it's not useful. It's just, it really needs to be in the right deck, but I can see why they would put a copy of it in this deck. Then we have Tezzeret's Gatebreaker. For 4, you have an artifact, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a blue artifact card from among them. Sorry, you may reveal a blue or artifact card from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in random order. Pay 5 and 1 blue, sacrifice it. Creatures you control can't be blocked this turn. These are the new versions of the tutor cards. In previous Planeswalker decks, there was a card that you would play that would be able to search a library or graveyard for your Planeswalker, and you'd be able to put in your hand. Great things about those cards was, for a deck that only has 1 copy of your Planeswalker, they would allow you to play it multiple times should you have played your Planeswalker and it went to the graveyard.
Now, I mentioned this before with the Ajani deck opening. These replacements for the old tutor cards, which would only focus on the Planeswalker from this deck, do have more versatility. They're a far more well-rounded card, I should say, when it comes to putting in just a regular deck that fits this theme. Like in this case, that has a lot of artifact synergy. However, they do lose a little something because, I mean, the Planeswalker decks are, like they say in the name, based around a particular Planeswalker. And the old tutor cards, one of the good things about them is because there's only 1 copy of your Planeswalker, it would allow you another chance to play it if your Planeswalker had hit the board and went to the graveyard. So it does lose a little something when it comes to the actual Planeswalker decks, but as I've mentioned a couple times now, the versatility of these new cards do create a more well-rounded type of card to include into a deck like this.
And then, of course, you just have 25 basic islands to round out the deck and actually allow you to cast stuff. Very important. Do not build many decks without land, though there probably is a couple that don't use any sort of land, but still, typically a useful addition to any deck you may want to build. So there we go. We've gone over every card in the deck. Now I'm going to give you my final thoughts near the end of the video, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and open up this pack of M19. Okay, so here we go. And interesting. I've only opened up at this point 1 single pack of M19. I'm going to go through each of the cards, by the way. I'm just going to read off fully the uncommons and rares, but I'm just going to read off the names of the common cards. And Catalyst Elemental was the first card I opened up in the only other pack of this I opened, so let's hope it's not going to be the exact same pack. Rustwing Falcon, I'm pretty sure was the second card. Tolarian Scholar, is this seriously going to be Act of Treason? Okay, Child Knight, this is the first card of those cards you just saw, which was not in order for the only other pack I've opened of M19. So I'm not sure about the randomization, but that's really unusual. So we have Child Knight, Titanic Growth, Essence Scatter, a perfectly viable counterspell, which could be included in, say, a mono blue deck. Naturalize, love the artwork of this card, also had it in the previous pack, but I definitely want to replace any Naturalizes I may have in other decks I have with this version because I'm really taken with this particular bit of artwork and I want it in foil. Strangling Spores, Marauder's Axe, and our first uncommon is Gastbark Twin. It is a whopping 7-drop, 5 and 2 green, gets you a 7/7 Tree Folk. It's got Trample, and it can block an additional creature each combat. Then we have Satyr Enchanter for 1, a green and a white. You get a 2/2 Satyr Druid, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. It could be very useful in the right deck. We have Sift for 3 and 1 blue. It's a sorcery, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. And then our rare card is Runic Armasaur. For 1 and 2 green, gets you a 2/5 dinosaur. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. That can be pretty bonkers if it's used against the right deck. So that is our rare card, and we have Stone Quarry as our land. Enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for red or white. And ooh, our token is an emblem. It's Vivian's emblem. Creatures you control get +2/+2. Is it Vivian? It is Vivian, right? Yeah, Vivian. I believe that's pronunciation. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and have Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible. Now, I'm going to mention this with each of these openings. I do have a Token of the Month club where there are tokens being exclusively created each and every month, a new token each and every month for Brain Pulp. And you can sign up to get either 1 to 10 sent directly to your door. I will provide a link to a video that talks more about it up in the corner. And there will be a link taking you to where you can sign up in the description below. So there you go. That is my little bit of a spiel done. Let's move on to my final thoughts on the deck. Okay, so as far as the Tezzeret Cruel Machinist deck goes, I mean, there definitely seems to be some great synergy with the artifacts. I see where they're going with the deck. I don't think it's necessarily a bad deck for a Planeswalker deck. And keep in mind, these Planeswalker decks are not going to be taking tournaments by storm. They're entry-level products for people who want to try Magic, want to have a ready-made deck, maybe want to get a chance to actually play a Planeswalker, which a lot of the time are out of people's price range to add in if you're a casual player creating a deck for the first time. So in that sense, I think it's a decent deck. I also think building a mono blue deck without any counter spells whatsoever is sacrilege. So that's crazy, and that's something they continue to do with any of these Planeswalker decks that have blue. There's just no counter spells to be seen anywhere. So I don't know why that is. There is some card draw in it, which I of course I enjoy drawing cards. There's bounce. So I mean, it's pseudo removal, and it can be also very frustrating. Not quite as frustrating as a counter spell, but yeah, let me know in the comments section below what you guys think of this deck, or just let me know what you think of M19, or how you did in your pre-release or your release weekend, or what you've opened up in some packs. Anything like that, you can let me know in the comments section, or you can contact me on Twitter @BrainPulpTV. And now that all that is said, take care, everyone. Thank you so much for all the support you show the channel. It means a lot to me. Have a wonderful day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. May all your puzzles be mythics, and I'll see you all again very soon.